It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. End the war or face biting tariffs. Donald Trump's message to President Putin as he changes course over weapon sales to Ukraine.
I don't know about you, Mark, but I felt that we had a deal about 4 times. And here we are, still talking about it.
The backdrop, a 10 times increase over the last year in Russian air attacks, and fears Moscow's forces could make a breakthrough on the battlefield. Also tonight, guilty of killing their newborn baby, the runaway scion of a wealthy family and her partner, now revealed to be a convicted rapist. The damaging double rebukes for the BBC over the behaviour of presenter Greg Wallace, and the broadcast of a documentary about Gaza.
This is like Vietnam, you know. We're taking losses, but in the end, we're going to win. It's a war.
No borders to their resistance, the volunteers taking on Donald Trump's immigration enforcement crackdown. And down to the wire, England's latest last gasp win gives them the lead in the Test series against India. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. It has been quite a journey. Just over 4 months ago, Donald Trump defended his relationship with President Putin during his infamous White House dressing down of Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky. Today, sitting in the same Oval Office chair, he struck a very different tone, threatening Russia with new tariffs if it doesn't make a deal for peace and promising to sell top-of-the-line weapons to NATO, which could then pass them on to Ukraine. NATO's Secretary-General called it a really big deal. Our US correspondent, James Matthews, reports now from the White House.
So really, thank you. This is important.
You did a great job.
Ukraine hasn't always sat comfortably in the Oval Office. Between a president and NATO Secretary-General, it found significant support.
I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple.
This was a US president coming round to the Ukrainian cause as the country endures intense Russian attacks. Trump announced 100% US tariffs on countries doing business with Russia if there's no peace deal in 50 days.
You don't have the cards.
Have you said thank you?
You're gambling with World War III.
The shouting match with Ukraine's president seemed a long time ago. Today's West Wing brought news of a deal on weapons sold by America to European countries for onward distribution to Ukraine. Political support in this White House comes at a cost.
We are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them.
No, Mr. President, dear Donald, this is really big. This is really big. You want Ukraine what it needs to have to maintain, to be able to defend itself against Russia, but you do want Europeans to pay for it.
If the move reflects a warming towards Kyiv, there is a chill with Moscow. Trump had acknowledged he's been played by Putin.
We're going to do something a little different for this country.
At a White House lunch with members of its faith office, he fleshed out the detail.
Numerous times I'd get home, I'd say, First Lady, I had the most wonderful talk with Vladimir. I think we're finished. And then I'll turn on the television, or she'll say to me one time, wow, that's strange because they just bombed a nursing home. I said, what?
It prompted an awkward laugh for uncomfortable territory.
We don't like that.
Always, sir. How are you, sir? It's good to see you.
Ukraine's president was meeting the US Special Envoy Keith Kellogg. Volodymyr Zelensky said he'd thanked Trump by phone and that they'd agreed to coordinate steps in future.
We are thankful to President Trump for his all messages and very strong decisions.
There will still be questions around a US president politically invested in building a relationship with Vladimir Putin. Not least among them surround the newly announced secondary sanctions. They'll be imposed if there's no peace deal in 50 days. Earlier this month on the phone, Putin told Trump that over the next 60 days, he plans an escalation in the conflict. It is a breathing space for the Russian leader, that won't make them breathe any easier in Ukraine.
Let us pray.
Trump is stepping into this conflict in a way Ukrainians haven't seen before. In this president, they trust in hope and prayer. James Matthews, Sky News, in Washington.
Donald Trump has made his decision to ramp up weapons delivery against the backdrop of a huge increase in air attacks on Ukraine. A year ago, Russia was launching 200 to 300 drones a night on average. Last week, the attacks peaked at more than 740. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, has more.
This wasn't quite the massive shift that had been hyped, but it is a big change all the same. Donald Trump is doing a number of things. He's committing to supply weapons to Ukraine, but only by selling them to European nations first. He is giving Putin an ultimatum, agree to a deal within 50 days, and he's threatening 100% secondary tariffs on Russia if the Russian leader fails to comply. The novel arrangement will see America selling billions of dollars worth of advanced weapons, potentially to European countries, who will then supply them on to Ukraine, instead of America sending them directly to Ukraine, as it has so far in this war. Countries like Germany, Finland, the UK, Denmark would be among the NATO buyers supplying Ukraine. What weapons is not clear beyond Patriot missile air defence batteries. Ukraine desperately needs better protection from Russian air attacks. They've ramped up massively recently, up by 50% in the last month alone. As these figures show here, almost 500 drones fired on the 9th of June, then peaking to more than 740 on one night last week. Compare that to a year ago when Ukraine was coping with 200 or 300 drones a night on average. The number of drones and missiles launched by Russian forces in June this year was 10 times the amount launched in June 2024, and it is exacting a punishing toll in terms of casualties. Last month saw the highest number of civilian casualties in any month since the war began from air attacks. More than 230 killed and more than 1,300 injured. What Trump has announced today will make a difference and be welcomed in Kyiv, but experts say there is a limit to what Patriot defence systems can do against swarms of cheap drones fired into Ukraine en masse.
Patriot is a system that is designed for high-speed cruise missiles and incoming ballistic missiles. So it's not really the most effective, or rather, it's not really most efficient use of a $3 million interceptor against drones that are being launched that might only cost a few $1,000s each. Also, the numbers that they're being launched in, hundreds a night, would rapidly use up Ukraine's supply of Patriot missiles.
So a shift, it seems, in the president's mindset, but a lot will depend on the details and whether this 50-day deadline for Russia is one the president is prepared to enforce with meaningful action, unlike some of his others.
Well, let's bring in James Matthews, who joins us from Washington. President Zelensky, James, thanking Donald Trump tonight. So how seismic a shift is this?
I think it's hugely significant, and I contrast the bonhomie inside the Oval Office today with the shouting match earlier this year when Volodymyr Zelensky was president and effectively chucked out of the White House. That day, American support for Ukraine seemed like a million miles away, the kind of support that Ukraine and NATO countries want and need. So today is a big day for Kyiv and for European capitals. They have seen a United States president step towards their cause, embrace the needs of Ukraine and European security, albeit incrementally. But Donald Trump has aligned himself with European interests. He spoke today about the necessity for a strong Europe. That contrasts with his constant running commentary about the Ukrainian conflict being a faraway war across the Atlantic that essentially had nothing to do with the United States. So it is a measure of good news for NATO and for Ukraine. I would say, though, Anna, Donald Trump could have gone further, and there will be lingering suspicions, I think, around questions. The question about this business of 50 days to reach a peace deal. Why has he given Vladimir Putin 50 days? Just days ago, Putin was on the phone saying in the next 60 days he would escalate the conflict to get what he wanted from Ukraine. That will fuel suspicion that Donald Trump isn't wholly behind Ukrainian interests in terms of what they want from the end of the conflict, it will fuel suspicion that he still holds a candle for Vladimir Putin and everything that he thinks Putin can deliver to him in terms of his political and business ambitions.
James, bringing us the latest there in Washington. Thank you. Now, the so-called runaway aristocrat, Constance Martin, and her partner have been convicted at the Old Bailey of the manslaughter of their baby daughter. Martin and Mark Gordon, whose criminal past, including a rape conviction, can now be fully revealed, evaded the authorities for nearly 2 months as they went on the run with their newborn. Their 4 other children had been taken into care. The body of the baby, called Victoria, was found inside a supermarket carrier bag left in a disused shed. A warning that you may find parts of Ashna Hurinag's report distressing.
The tiny frame of newborn baby Victoria, fragile and failed by her parents. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon risked her life to keep her all to themselves. This is one of the last times she'd be seen alive. This was the moment the manhunt for them began, after their car caught fire on a motorway in Bolton in January 2023. Gordon was talking to Mr. Hudson, who filmed this video.
The nearest rest stop.
He and his son had pulled over and tried to help, but it became clear the couple wanted to be left alone.
She sort of says, "Do you want to get on your way?" And I said, "No. Well, we can wait a bit if you want." "No, you'd be fine. We'll be fine now."
It's thought Mr. Hudson is the only person aside from the couple to have interacted with the baby.
It did lie heavy on me. I didn't like my thoughts at that time because I was still thinking, what if the police had come? What if I'd have stayed?
The car had been packed full of clothing, food, notebooks and the placenta from the birth. What followed is the couple spending more than 50 days on the run, often using the cover of darkness to travel hundreds of miles across the country, living undetected, all with their newborn. They spent hundreds of pounds on taxis, travelling from Bolton to London to Essex and the south coast, before choosing to live off-grid in sub-zero temperatures. They ditched a buggy hours after buying it, and according to the prosecution, carried Victoria in a supermarket shopping bag instead. It was in this same bag that her body would later be found. They had been previously warned about the dangers of living in a tent with a newborn, but families say they had little choice and had to keep moving. This is Karen Satchell, Gordon's sister. She believes the spotlight on them was too harsh.
I think they were traumatised as a couple and didn't know what to do and deal with it. And it's very, very heart-clenching to find that. Can you imagine how you would feel? Nobody can actually imagine that unless they've actually lived it, and the trauma now that you're under surveillance and underneath all this scrutiny, and then the baby dies. It's like, wow, oh my God, what are we going to do now?
Any empathy may have been lost when the jury found out about Gordon's disturbed past. This trial has been explosive and unprecedented, with details of Mark's previous convictions revealed to the jury. They heard that aged 14, whilst living in the United States, he was convicted of a number of sexual offences, including rape. He then returned to the UK after serving 22 years behind bars, before then meeting Marten. He also served time for assaulting Patrick Nash.
I had my yard tools out on the back porch. He came in with a shovel and he attacked me with a shovel.
Speaking from his home in Florida, he recalled the night an armed Gordon broke in.
I had to go have stitches in my scalp. I think I got like between 12 and 17 stitches or staples.
The couple met in 2014. Victoria was their 5th child. The other 4 are all now in care.
Right, where's your child?
When they were eventually arrested at the end of February 2023, both repeatedly refused to answer questions about the baby's whereabouts.
We talk about a baby that's been found. We have found the baby.
Baby Victoria's body was found in a shopping bag inside this shed, covered with rubbish and dirt. A jury has now found that her parents' actions led to her entirely avoidable death at just a few weeks old. Ashna Harinag, Sky News.
It's not the first bad day for the BBC in its 100-plus-year history, but it's certainly a rare one, with not one but two crises raising questions about the leadership of the corporation. First, the BBC admitted it missed opportunities to deal with former MasterChef host Greg Wallace's behaviour after an investigation upheld 45 complaints against him. Then the corporation apologised for the broadcast of a documentary about Gaza, narrated by the son of a Hamas official. Ofcom has now opened an investigation into whether the programme misled viewers. Sky's arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer reports.
The sun might have been out at New Broadcasting House, but BBC bosses finding it never rains, but it pours. As staff ate their salads, the corporation having to digest not one, but two reports.
Have you ever wondered what you'd do if your world was destroyed?
One into its editorial integrity over this documentary on Gaza.
Our four best chefs, they will go straight through to the next round.
Another on whether it allowed inappropriate behaviour to slide on its top cooking show, finding itself in hot water.
I asked the board directly why nobody had resigned or been fired over the series of failures that we've seen recently. What I've had in response is an action plan that is aimed at addressing the reasons why some of these failures happened and making sure that they can never happen again.
A report into Greg Wallace's behaviour commissioned by the production company which hired him, upholding 45 of 83 complaints made against him, including 16 claims of sexually explicit comments, 12 claims relating to inappropriate jokes, 1 allegation of unwanted touching, 4 claims of culturally insensitive or racist comments, 3 claims he was in a state of undress, and 7 allegations of bullying. The presenter saying in a statement he'd faced trial by media, fuelled by rumour and clickbait. None of the serious allegations against me were upheld, he said. I challenged the remaining issue of unwanted touching, but have had to accept a difference in perception. I am deeply sorry for any distress caused. It was never intended. While his recent diagnosis of autism is cited for his difficulty in reading social cues, there's been some backlash from within the neurodivergent community.
I think we do need to call out that blaming misconduct on autism, it just throws the autistic community under the bus. And, you know, this is a moment for us to reflect on how we talk about disability, power and accountability. And it's super important that we don't allow the weaponisation of neurodivergence to shield influential men from scrutiny.
The BBC has now said it sacked Wallace, but that's not the only drama.
The BBC has always said nothing is more important than trust and transparency in its journalism. So while the report into Greg Wallace might make headlines, the huge fallout over the narrator of a documentary it commissioned about Gaza turning out to be the son of a Hamas official has been a bruising storm to weather, with criticism coming from all sides.
Would you help people?
How to Survive a War Zone was ultimately pulled by the BBC from its iPlayer. The much-delayed report into what happened, finding the BBC breached its editorial guidelines on accuracy. The CEO of BBC News apologising on Radio 4.
I'm sorry this happened. It was a mistake.
Let's just be clear. No one in the BBC knew that the father of this narrator was a Hamas official.
No, exactly. That's what the report finds.
Should they have known?
Yes, they should have known, because their questions should have been answered at the many times of asking by the independent production company.
And when they weren't answered, they should have been pursued.
Yes.
BBC Director General Tim Davie apologising for a significant failing, pledging the corporation would take action to prevent it happening again. No hope of sweeping today's drama under the rug, clearing up after a difficult day. The BBC forced to admit faults and make changes. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, in the last hour, Greg Wallace's former co-presenter, John Torode, has confirmed that he is one of the other individuals mentioned in the report. Releasing his statement on social media, he said, "I am aware of speculation that I am one of the 2 other individuals against whom an allegation has been upheld. For the sake of transparency, I confirm that I am the individual who is alleged to have used racial language on one occasion." The allegation is that I did so sometime in 2018 or 2019 in a social situation, and that the person I was speaking with did not believe that it was intended in a malicious way, and that I apologised immediately afterwards. I have absolutely no recollection of any of this, and I do not believe that it happened. However, I want to be clear that I've always had the view that any racial language is wholly unacceptable in any environment. I'm shocked and saddened by the allegation, as I would never wish to cause anyone any offence. London's Southend airport remains closed tonight as investigators continue to try to discover what caused the crash of a plane shortly after takeoff. All 4 people who died in Sunday's crash of a medical transport plane are understood to have been foreign nationals, including a nurse from Chile. Sky's Rachel Venables reports now from Southend.
It left a line of debris in its wake, the now molten shell of this small aeroplane, which crashed on Sunday afternoon, killing everyone on board. One of those on the flight was Chilean nurse Maria Fernanda Rojas Ortiz. Reports claim it was her first day on the job. Sky News understands the pilot and co-pilot were both Dutch men, and a male European medical professional was also on board. The Air Accident Investigation Branch is working alongside Essex Police to work out what happened to them.
If there are safety lessons that can be learned, we will make recommendations that aim to prevent a similar accident occurring. Now that the emergency services have secured the site, we will be able to begin gathering the evidence we need to understand the circumstances that led to this accident.
The crash itself happened moments after takeoff, erupting in a fireball, sending black smoke billowing into the sky and grounding all other flights.
We were due to fly to Alicante and we were actually sitting on the runway on our plane. Passengers were loading, it's about 4 o'clock. And my husband was looking out the window and he saw a huge black smoke. Obviously, we've got to think of the people who were on the flight. We're not worried about our holidays so much. We're very fortunate, so it's just very, very sad.
The plane was often used for medical flights, transporting patients or organs. Earlier that day, it had flown to Greece and Croatia and was due to head back to the Netherlands.
From the outside, this airport seems to have fallen silent, with no flights able to take off or land and passengers diverted. But on the other side of this runway, investigators will be working around the clock, sifting through the wreckage of this plane to gather the physical evidence they need to try to understand what caused the crash with such devastating results.
It might be some time before we understand what caused this tragedy, but investigators will be keen to get the answers they need, both for the sakes of the family, friends and colleagues of those who died, and for the wider aviation industry. Rachel Venables, Sky News at Southend Airport.
A man has been sentenced to life with a minimum term of 23 years in prison for murdering his girlfriend. 27-year-old Ewan Methven pleaded guilty last month. The body of 21-year-old Phoenix Spencer Horn was discovered in her home in East Kilbride in November last year. The judge said no punishment he could give would ever be enough. Rachel Reeves refused to rule out a wealth tax today amid speculation that she will have to raise taxes in the autumn budget. Visiting a school in Wigan with Cabinet colleague Lisa Nandy, the Chancellor only committed to holding rates on taxes that working people pay. She said promises not to increase income tax, national insurance and VAT remained in place, along with her non-negotiable fiscal rules. Thames Water has issued a temporary hosepipe ban for parts of the Thames Valley. The ban, which will come into place next Tuesday, will include Swindon, Gloucestershire, Oxfordshire, Berkshire and Wiltshire. It is the second ban issued this summer, with one already in place in Yorkshire after England saw its warmest June on record. Now, activists fighting back against immigration and customs enforcement agents in the US say it is a war they're engaged in. So-called ICE raids, where enforcement officers grab people off the streets to be sent to detention centres, are one of the most controversial policies of the Trump administration. Now, activists are mounting a resistance against ICE agents. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner saw that resistance in action.
It's
It's 5:30 a.m. in the car park of a laundrette in South Central LA.
This is like Vietnam. You know, we're taking losses, but in the end, we're going to win. It's a war.
This is what the resistance movement against Donald Trump's deportation policies looks like. This group of organised volunteers is about to set off on patrol. They'll be looking for any sign of immigration enforcement. Under pressure from the White House, immigration agents known as ICE are intensifying deportation efforts in LA. They're targeting car washes, DIY shop car parks and farms. Anywhere that people living here without proper documents are known to work. Some have been here for decades, but they're arrested and taken to detention centres. Videos like these have prompted outrage and now the fight back. Armed with walkie-talkies, they set off to warn their neighbours.
Right now, the tension is like people hate these agents because they're terrorizing our community and our people. But they really are operating 24 hours a day at this point.
People are on edge, right, at the moment?
Yeah, big time.
Ron and another volunteer scan the streets in this heavily Latino area. They're looking for vehicles like the ones immigration agents often use.
A few vehicles look suspicious, but nothing of note. Just checking in.
This man to your right here, he's the exact target that they're looking for. That's what they're doing now. The low-hanging fruit, the easy victim. Yeah. And so that is proving to be more successful for their quotas.
It turns out to be a quiet morning, no sign of any brewing immigration operations, but the vigilance is understandable. Maria knows the cost of being caught unaware.
It's, sorry, it's kind of hard without him. I just, feel alone when you get used to somebody and he's not there no more.
Is this the longest you've ever been apart from him?
Yes, we've never been apart.
Last month, her husband Javier was working at a car wash. This video shows him being handcuffed and forced into a vehicle by ICE agents. He's now being held in a detention centre 2 hours away.
I know they're doing their job, but it's like, they don't have to do it like that, getting them and, forcing people and, and pushing them down on the ground. And, they're not animals.
Javier has lived in the US nearly 40 years and paid taxes for most of that time, says Maria. The couple have 3 grown-up American children and 2 grandchildren. But Javier's work permit expired 2 years ago, meaning he was living here illegally.
I don't know what to say to my grandkids because the oldest one, he calls them papas. When is papa's coming home? And it's like, I don't know what to say. He's not a criminal. He doesn't have any bad background. All he did was just work.
Some question whether these people doing physical and menial jobs are really the ones American voters wanted thrown out. Soledad owns a Mexican restaurant in Hollywood. She watches in horror as yet another raid unfolds at a nearby farm.
Must be scary watching this in your city.
I'm very scared, she says. All of her employees are undocumented, some too nervous to come to work. The process to get papers, she says, is too long and too expensive.
I have to work double shifts to be able to make up for their hours, and yes, I am very desperate and sometimes I cry. We have no sales and no money to pay their wages.
The restaurants and the streets are much quieter here than before. People chilled by the raids. The White House says they're protecting the country from dangerous criminals. ICE agents have been shot at while carrying out operations. The tension here is ratcheting up. Deportation numbers are rising too. But the order from Donald Trump is to arrest even more people living here illegally. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
Well, now, and finally, England's cricket team have made a habit of delivering dramatic test match wins under captain Ben Stokes. And today, there was one of the most nail-biting. The last Indian batsman was dismissed just 22 runs short of claiming a victory for the visitors. Mohammad Siraj's wicket, taken by Shoaib Bashir, who was bowling with a broken finger on his left hand. The wicket sparked huge celebrations, as you can see, as England went 2-1 up in the series. Not so for the visitors, as you can tell. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we will take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined, as you can see, by the columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards and the former Conservative Special Advisor Salma Shah. Great to see both of you. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this take on the Constance Martin and Mark Gordon case on the front page of the Daily Mail. They call her the killer aristocrat, and the headline revealed why the daughter of privilege had 4 children taken into care. That and plenty more when we come back.